So what I'm doing is you might be able to hear in the background, and in fact it's a little bit distracting to ADHD more, is that I am screen recording the unlawful and in fact illegal tenancy tribunal hearing that I was not again properly notified for, and the one that I tried to get adjourned because I was supposed to move out the day before. I'm screen recording that because it's just easier. I don't have the tech like I can use YouTube, the what's it called, the editor or developer or whatever application on my computer much better than I can on my phone. So it's actually just easier to just screen record and stitch together in the pretty rubbish ways that you've seen that I've been doing. My point is more to get the information across than anything else. So while that runs in the background with my embarrassing ADHD alarms popping up on the screen because it's a screen recording, like a clean toothbrush, and for fuck's sake, that's what you have to do as an ADHD person, or that's what I recommend you do anyway, but they pop up at inconvenient moments and I never manage to seem to be able to turn them off, the function off in a way that actually sticks in the way that I want to. So everyone can see, I remind myself to clean my toothbrush, which I do every week because I'm very clean and tidy, as I mop up a little spill on my bathroom floor. So I've just got to let that run in the background and hope nothing too much embarrassing comes. I recorded it in part 2 because we did take a brief adjournment in the middle of the hearing. Technically it's an adjournment, but really it was just a break because it was quite long. I think it was for 2.5 hours in all. And I just wanted to explain a little bit more about it because the way that I've explained it, I have to explain it in a simple way because, and I haven't oversimplified it necessarily. I wouldn't say that I haven't oversimplified it. I haven't made it simplistic, but my explanations have been that it was a hearing to determine whether or not my tenancy should be terminated. And that, of course, I don't understand how the Tenancy Tribunal or the Residential Tenancies Act thinks this is fair. In fact, it's not specified in the Residential Tenancies Act very clearly or firmly enough that I think the adjudicators need to be this fucking horrible. But if a request for an adjournment is heard, and it's not a rehearing, it's a rehearing hearing, which is what this is. I've called it for simplicity's purpose, I've called it a hearing to terminate my tenancy, and that's just to bypass the complexity that has not been necessary in order to explain to people the basics of what's happening. But what happened was that there was a thoroughly unlawful decision to terminate my tenancy, giving me something like, I think, 6 weeks or something, or maybe 3 weeks, I'm not quite sure, to move out. Anyway, instead of giving me a rehearing, and I had these are thorough reasons that I've been given, every fucking reason in the book, and really you need only one reason for a rehearing, and that's total failure on the court's part, on the tribunal's part, to issue an accurate notice of hearing. That's really the most fundamental thing. When you talk about you had one job, come on, issue a notice of hearing, for fuck's sake. You can't expect a party to turn up expecting to discuss something minor like access to clean your oven, and then find out it's actually to hear about for termination for your tenancy when no one's told you what it's for, because they haven't given you a lawful notice of hearing, either of content or of the specificities or of the section that it comes under. What they were saying is untrue. Rex was wrong. There was no mention of the section about terminating my tenancy. It was simply about access to clean my oven, which, as I said, was not an unlawful. When I declined access, it wasn't an unlawful decline. It was completely lawful, because you're only allowed access as a landlord for necessary repairs and maintenance and notified inspections. Cleaning an oven that is rusted and ended up being replaced is not necessary repairs and maintenance. You can't clean junk. You can't clean junk and call that a necessary repair. Anyway, so what the hearing was a hearing for my rehearing application, but between those times, so then at that point that the rehearing hearing had been granted, the order of tribunal to terminate my tenancy got suspended. Now, it should be suspended off the ground, and if you think of time as a conveyor belt running underneath it, you'd think that you just drop down on the conveyor belt again when it's unsuspended, but it doesn't. What they do, and I don't know if they have to do this, again, as I said, the RTA is a bit unclear, and I think it needs to be reworked for modern predators, who are the ones who operate the residential tenancies market. What happens is that without any notice, you suddenly get the order of tribunal after the rehearing's been considered, and if they decide that you don't get a rehearing for a termination, then the pause unpauses, and you're already in breach of order if the time that you should have moved out has passed, which is insane. That is insane. So that means that they expect you to move out in the past. I'm not joking. And I thought that was just one adjudicator being insane in Wellington. But it turns out that it's just an insane law with a whole bunch of insane people working there. And they have the discretion to override that, and I can't see why any sane or morally sane person wouldn't, even though the order of tribunal was criminally erroneous. The adjudicator, Rebecca Morgan, did at least mention the time frame. She specified a date. She didn't specify a time frame, but the date was indicated as a time frame to me, as in a floating time frame, not a specific date. The focus was on the time frame, not the date, because she said that ought to give Ms McDonald time to find a new home. Now, the spirit of that is giving me time to find a new home. Now, when you just lift an order and then immediately you have to move out immediately, and you may be in breach of court order because the move out day is in the past. I mean, it's that insane. It's a huge liability that I think a lot of tenants don't realise, that if you ask for an adjournment for a tribunal order to terminate your tenancy, you have to realise that you may be in a worse position than you were before. And other things that happened during that time, including being the night before I'd been assaulted by Mitchell, and so it was like, and I'd been arrested for the first time, so that was the arrest. Oh, sorry, this is 2 days later. So at that stage, I was just like, I just wasn't really giving a shit, and I was in the process of moving out. But as I said, so while the order was being considered, after my request to adjourn and rehear the order to terminate my tenancy, which was totally illegal, as I said. It was totally illegal. It was fraudulent. It was perjury by the applicants and by the adjudicator. Perjury, honestly, very severe perjury. And very wrong on basic matters of the law, which I don't think the tribunal has that much flexibility in interpreting. While order has been suspended. It's not an order. It's not an order of tribunal while it's been suspended. So during that time, I had a bit of time to think, and I thought, you know what? I just want to get out of here now. This is a dangerous building. It's a Loafers Lodge style situation where it actually looks really good, but there's no maintenance done. It was a health and safety hazard. I've been assaulted by a neighbour. I had no response or protection by the anyone purporting to be the landlord or the actual landlord, and landlord is not is defined circularly, and the RTA is a lot of terminology is defined circularly in Acts of Parliament, but not in such a problematic way as in the RTA, which is what the fuck is a landlord? It isn't defined. It's defined by itself. Has this stopped? No, it's still going. But I had my delicate laundry cycle reminder pop up. And so, so I have not deceived anyone. You can see that this is just really, really, really complicated. And a lot of people, when I say I've got a hearing for a rehearing, they think I'm saying a hearing. And it's not. It's like, no, I'm having a hearing for a rehearing. And they're like, what the fuck's a hearing for a rehearing? And I'm like, it's a hearing to decide whether I should get a rehearing. So you can see why I don't go, when I tell people this was a hearing for to hear, about whether my tenancy should be terminated. Do you see why I just use that kind of shorthand and I cut out all the loopy? It's a bit like taking a bit of colon out, really. It doesn't really bear much relevance to a lot of what I need to explain to you about my situation. It's legally equivalent. But now I'm getting down to brass tacks, and I'm showing what these crooks have done, and I'm showing how Rex Woodhouse, the adjudicator, what a crook he is too, because you can hear, and I don't know, the Tenancy Tribunal is supposed to be accessible. It was just me, and then the litigator, and then them, and he has it's not a litigation firm, but they have a litigation department, and he's an ex-ACC litigator, in-house litigator to basically bully disabled people, and he's very good at that, but he doesn't have any legal knowledge or skills whatsoever. He's just one of those nasty fucking pricks who just throws ad hominems and makes a lot of circular arguments. For example, he kept defending his side by citing what the tribunal had ordered, but the entire point of the hearing was to hear my reasons that the tribunal was wrong. So you can't cite the tribunal's decision in support of the tribunal's decision, right? That's circular. I was saying the tribunal's decision was wrong. But I don't think anyone at the tribunal is clever enough to understand that you can't use circular arguments. And it used to be that philosophy and law were hand in glove. And I do intend to study the law, and I think that I've got a really, really good head start because I was really good at philosophy. But it's again a bit of a problem where I don't know how good a lawyer I'm going to be for clients if the adjudicator or the judge can't understand logic. It's really frightening. And especially if they don't even understand the laws that they're working with. So anyway, I had already spoken well in advance. I'd spoken because I knew what kind of bitches I was dealing with, and I got in touch with civil enforcement, and they said you need to go to the fines, which is it's called Fines at Ministry of Justice, whatever, but it deals with bailiffs as well. And I spoke to the principal registrar there called Adrian. Somebody had a long conversation with Adrian. I've gone through this before. I won't repeat this conversation, but basically Adrian and I were we were just having a conversation, like two people. It wasn't adversarial. It was like, yeah, what do we do about this problem? And he said, well, I really don't think they'll be able to get we have hardly any bailiffs on duty at the moment. By the time that you've already given notice to move out, by the time you move out, I don't think there, I think you'd be long gone by the time a bailiff becomes available. And he said, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do once we get an order of tribunal. We have to follow it. We can't. We don't have any hand in that decision. And he said it is a bit tricky situation, but I can't see that you're going to be in. I can't see that you would be at risk of having an eviction, given given the circumstances. And then fast forward, I returned on my second to last day of my tenancy, and there was an eviction notice on my door, and it was for the next day. And I rang, but it because I had PTSD, and it was horrible. I mean, I was mostly moved out, but I wasn't completely moved out, and I was still very stressed and completely exhausted. So I rang the bailiff, Joe, and had a really good conversation with him, and he said, yeah, look, unfortunately, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen a lot of revenge evictions, and there's nothing that I can do. But what I am going to do is just make sure that I'm not going to I'm not going to pressure you or bug you. I know that you're already on your way out. This is a very unfortunate situation for you. I have to follow the law, but I'm going to give you the widest margin possible. And we both agreed that, well, since I was moving under my own volition anyway, that there would not be a problem, and there wasn't a problem. But so an eviction was never needed to carry out. All he did was put a notice on my door, and as he said to me, he echoed what Adrian, the fines and bailiffs, principal. Registrar had said to me, he repeated that. He said, I literally don't have the time to evict you. Like, I couldn't do that for a couple of weeks anyway, and so it was just a spite eviction, and I don't know how they managed. And I asked civil enforcement, how did this happen? And no one replied to me. And unfortunately, they're not subject to the Privacy Act, and I don't know how I'd get the information, but basically somehow these bitches wangled an eviction which they had to pay the bailiff for, but they've charged me for the bailiff fee, which I think is some hundreds of dollars plus changing the locks, which is part of that process. And I was gone. And I would have been gone 20 days earlier, 3 weeks earlier, had the Tenancy Tribunal allowed me to move out and discuss the parts that weren't about my termination later, which was other stuff. Anyway, that, I think, helps to explain what happened there. Yeah, and it was stressful enough without those bitches turning up and breaking and entering on my last day when I was already away. But I had my Ring camera facing my door because I know what they're like. So I'll go back and listen to this because it's quite interesting to me too. Bit triggering. I've taken a couple of extra clonazepam, but yeah, does this sound accessible to you? It's not accessible, is it? Why would they let a litigator go up against me and call that equal? And that's one of the points that I raise, is that this is totally uneven. And the bullshit that came out of Dominic's mouth, oh my God, to try and make out that the ragtag individual members of some mental health support agencies, and someone I'd met in Hillmorton to come and kind of be with me. He tried to make out that was the equivalent of a litigation department of a law firm.